Hi there, friends. Welcome to Whoa, That's Good Wednesday. I am so excited about today. I'm hosting again because my sweet daughter Sadie is home with her 2 baby girls, and it's a really good life, and I'm so grateful for it, and I'm grateful to get to be here today to talk to you, and I have the funnest new friend to introduce you to. She, I feel like we're going to have a lot in common. She loves Jesus. She loves her family. She loves her small town, which is a little hint as to who she is. She's an artist, an entrepreneur, an author. She and her husband, Ben, have Laurel Mercantile in Laurel, Mississippi. Another big hint as to who she is. And she is the host of HGTV's Hometown and Hometown Takeover and all the fun things. So welcome to the podcast, Erin Napier.
Thank you so much for inviting me to do this. We have been Instagram friends for a few years, so it's really fun to have a real face-to-face.
I know, yeah.
Totally.
Well, face-to-face in 2023, I guess. Yeah. Someday we're going to have a real face-to-face because we're not that far apart.
We're not. I think we're like 4 hours away from me.
We need to. You got to come to Louisiana, or I'll come to Mississippi. We got to make that happen.
Yes.
All right. Well, thanks for being here today. I cannot wait to talk. I've actually I've been reading your book in preparation for our talk today. And I feel like I knew you a little bit, from seeing you on TV and all of that. And of course, I was getting to know you over the years. But it's been so fun to read your book and hear more about your story. So I can't wait for you to share that with others. But first, we start with the question that we start with every time on One That's Good. And that is, what is the best piece of advice you have ever been given?
Okay, so I have chewed on this for weeks. You gave me a good heads up. And the one that keeps rising to the top for me is there's a devotional called Streams in the Desert. Have you ever read that one?
Mm-hmm.
By L.B. Cowman. That one has seen me through some very difficult times in my life. And one of the devotionals said that a wise woman once said to mind the checks, that is the best way to live your life for God and to figure out what your calling in life is. And this is especially relevant to us because when Ben and I met in college, we made all these plans. We said we were going to do this. He was going to get his master's degree. He was going to be a history professor. He was going to go to law school. I was going to design magazines and books. We were probably going to live in Birmingham. We were not worried about when we would have kids. Anyway, none of that happened.
Mm-hmm.
And that's because we minded the checks.
Wow.
And that means God sends little whispers of hints, little taps, little that are easy to shrug off or easy to dismiss. But if you can mind the checks, He lets you know when you're getting off the path or when you're on the right path, and you'll know it. And we have felt or heard little checks along the way in this whole journey. And every good thing that we had planned for our life was completely superseded by the great thing that God had planned for us when we minded the checks.
I love that so much. That's so good. And yeah, you and Ben sound a little bit of like Willie and I. We were young when we got married, and we had all kinds of things that we were going to do. And from like opening a bowling alley to I don't even know all the things,
The dream.
Exactly.
If we could just own a bowling alley.
That's right. You just don't know. Like Willie wanted to be all kinds of things, and we had all kinds of ideas, and all of God's plans were way bigger and better, including to like how many kids we were going to have and the order that we were going to have them and all those things. God's plans are always so much better. And I love that. I love that idea. I'm going to remember that, mind the checks, because it is, it's the quiet voice of God that you have to
it's so quiet.
Listen to and be in tune to see where He is leading you and the things that He has put in you. I love to think about our kids, and as I've seen them grow up, you can look back, and I know like you're your kids are still young. So like you're in that phase, but you start seeing those things that God puts in them, those like gifts or talents or just natural abilities that they have, like whether they're more confident or they're a little bit more cautious or they're this or that, and all those things God's placed in them. As you see them grow up, it's so fun to see that like, oh, God put that in you from the time you were born. He had a plan for your life so early on. And I think that the more we're aware of that, the better we're.
And one of my biggest prayers is that I will recognize what those are and that I'll nurture them the right way.
Yeah, that's so good.
My parents were very good at nurturing creativity, even though my dad was not what you consider a very creative person. He was a big cheerleader for me in my creative endeavors. Yeah. And it scared him. It scared him. He was like, do you really need to go to art school? What about architecture?
Yeah.
And I'd be like,
that would be more of a safe choice, huh?
Yes. And I would be like, I promise, Daddy, I'm going to work hard. I'm going to work hard. And he'd be like, all right, let's do this. And my mom was very creative. So that's where I got it from. It all came from Mama. But I hope that I'll recognize it. Those are checks too.
Yeah.
Our kids are giving us checks that we're maybe not noticing.
Yeah. That's so good. Yeah. And I think that a lot of young people listen to this podcast, and it's like, I've noticed this, Sadie and I've read about this. It's like purpose anxiety. It's like there's a lot of young people having this like anxiety about like what's their purpose or what am I supposed to do or where am I supposed to be? And I always say, like you just got to take that next step. God is directing your path. He's with you. You've got to listen to him. But it's not like I'm going to like make the wrong choice and God is not going to be with me. I'm not going to I'm going to move to like Mississippi and God's not there because he said go here. God is with you wherever you go. But it's that listening to his voice creates that abundant life that he has for you. So I love that. When you're talking about being a teenager, being young, and that creativity that you had. I know in your book, you talk a little bit about feeling different as a kid and as a teenager. And what was that like for you? And kind of what's your perspective on that now as an adult?
I think I just lived in a house with people who were so much older than me. My brother was 9 years older. And then my parents, and they were my best friends. I mean, that's who I spent all my time with. And so when I went to elementary school, I just had a hard time relating to people my own age. And so they had a hard time relating to me too. And I was always closest to the teacher. I wanted to talk to the teachers, and I don't know. I just, I had a hard time, especially, I guess, middle school, 5th grade. Is that middle school? 5th grade was brutal.
Yeah. Middle school's hard.
Oh man, it was bad. It was just particularly brutal. I just didn't fit in. By 5th grade, I felt like I was ready to move on. I was done with elementary school. And by 9th grade, I was done with high school and I was ready to move on. I've just always been older on accident. But I don't know. My family was a little bit different, I guess, in our community. My dad was the first doctor of physical therapy in Mississippi. One of the first, not the very first, but one of the first. And he also was a chicken farmer. And my mom was a realtor, but she was also a writer and a painter. And people didn't pursue that many things at once. It was weird. My parents were probably considered a little bit weird.
Yeah.
They didn't hang out with the other kids' parents. Yeah. So that was another thing that was against me, I guess. But it was, 5th grade, 6th grade too. They were rough. The worst, and I don't know, it's not a big deal now, but when I never got invited to sleepovers. I finally got invited to a sleepover, and lots of girls in my class were there. And they were like, let's play hide and seek. You're it. And I had to go to the girls' room and count to 100. And when I came out, they had all left.
Oh, no.
And they went to the girl across the street's house.
Yeah.
And
that's felt devastating as a 5th grader. Yeah.
It was hard to... So y'all think I'm really weird and no one wants to be with me. I'm going to call Mama. Yeah. And so I called my mom and she came and picked me up, as every sleepover went when I was little. And I worry if I'm inordinately focused on how things went for me when I'm thinking of May and Helen now.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want that to happen to them.
Mm-hmm.
But I also think that it was a valuable tool in character development.
Yeah. I so relate to that, feeling like for your kids, like you don't want them to go through the hard times, but you also know those hard times are what shape you and what make you. And so, yeah, how do you feel like that shaped you? And kind of now looking back on it, how do you think that shaped your life? Hey y'all, Sadie here, and I gotta say, stepping into postpartum again is another chance to let my body just heal and go back to normal. What is normal? Go back to being strong and healthy, and that starts with healthy habits, even if they're small, and that's why AG1 by Athletic Greens is great for our family. It's so simple and convenient. Christian especially loves how easy it is to fit this healthy habit into his daily routines. Every scoop has 75 vitamins, minerals, and whole food source ingredients, so all Christian has to do is literally put one scoop in his water in the morning and he's off to a great start. AG1 has helped him stay focused and energetic throughout the day. Plus, it supports his immune system and his gut health too, which we are big gut health people because gut health makes your mental health better. And everybody knows better mental health is a better world. So sometimes life can be hectic, but AG1 was designed with ease in mind so that you can live healthier and better without having to do a lot. Even when we travel, it's super easy for Christian and I both to just throw some packs into our bag, and it's just like super convenient because traveling can be hard to stay healthy, but this is a great way to stay healthy. We've gotten our friends and family kicked on it too. And another thing that I especially love about Athletic Greens is their vitamin D3 plus K2 drops, because vitamin D has been huge for me. It's helped my health so much. It makes me feel so much more energetic. It makes my skin look better, my just everything feel better. And it's super easy. You can just put some drops into your water or on your food, and it's great for your heart, your teeth, your bones, all kinds of things. Plus, in this little bottle, it has over 600 servings, so it will last you a long time. You don't have to worry about keeping up with that. And if you're looking for an easier way to take supplements, Athletic Greens is giving a free 1-year supply of vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. Just go to athleticgreens.com/whoa. That's athleticgreens.com/whoa and check it out today.
It made me aware of the one who's eating alone, which is why I fell in love with Ben in the first place. He was hard to miss. He's 6'6", and he was 260 pounds in college. And he has lost so much weight. He's gotten so slim.
That's awesome.
But you just couldn't miss him when he's in a room because he's the big guy and he was the president of all these clubs. But I had a disdain for the popular guy in high school. That was the opposite of what I was about. I was going to go to art school. I wanted to play music. And guys like that are the bad guys in all the teen movies.
Yes.
But he was not. He was different. He would find the person that was eating alone in the cafeteria at our small community college we went to. There were 6,000 students. It was a pretty awesome college experience for 2 years. But he would find the person eating alone and he would sit with them and he would be their friend. He would ask them questions. He makes you feel invested in you from the first conversation. He really wants to know people. Yeah. And I think that's a ministerial part of him. He grew up a preacher's son and then he was in student ministry for years, but he just wants to know people.
Yeah.
And I am an introvert. I don't ask people questions. I just sort of shrink. And I would watch him, and he was always dating, cheerleaders or girls on the dance team. And I was like, I am just not that girl. He will never know I exist. And I was not eating alone. I had lots of friends. They were the art department kids, and we did yearbook. And, but then the few times he finally, I was in a place where we spoke to each other. We had friends in common. I was just so nervous that I totally bombed. He was so kind.
Apparently you didn't bomb. Apparently you did not bomb because you ended up together. So
Korie, I bombed. We were both getting a fountain drink at McDonald's in Ellisville, Mississippi. And I had a friend who was eating with me and she was like, Erin, do you know Ben? And I was like, I don't know him at all, but I want to marry him. He smells so good. He's so nice. My gosh, he's so handsome. And anyway, he was like, "Hey, I'm Ben. We haven't met before, but I've seen you around campus." And I was like, "Yeah, you look like a guy that I work with." I worked in the hospital pharmacy then, and they looked alike. I noticed this because I had a little crush on the guy at work because he reminded me of Ben Napier. And Ben said, "We must be a pretty good looking guy." And he was joking. And I didn't know what to say. And I went with, I guess.
Oh, no.
What could I say?
Right.
What could I say?
You're like,
that?
Yes.
I think he's so handsome because he looks like you. And oh my gosh, I love you so much.
That's so
that
great.
wouldn't have played well either, probably.
Yeah.
So our first 3 or 4 interactions went just like that. Ben coming up to speak to me, to say something kind, and then I say something dismissive because I don't know how to be chill. But that is, I have so much appreciation and admiration for the people like Ben who want to include and notice everybody. And that's what I hope my girls pick up. I hope that they are the outgoing one. I'm not the outgoing one. For me, it's difficult and I try, but we're working hard on lessons like, Helen has a friend at school and she says, "I don't think that we're friends anymore." And I said, "Why, baby?" And she said, "Because when she gets to school, sometimes I say, 'Hey, how are you?' And she cries." And I was like, "Baby, that's not you. I think she may have something difficult going on in her life that you don't know about. So you should give her a hug."
Yeah.
When she does that. Things that I hope, please be the one that makes people feel loved when they feel alone.
That's so good.
It's hard to teach a 5-year-old empathy, and I hope that it will just come naturally at some point. But
well, it sounds like you're doing it. That's awesome. I love hearing your love story. That was one thing I loved about your book. So I keep referring to your book. It's called Make Something Good Today. And it's a memoir, but I was thinking as I was reading it, it reads like a love story for within your relationship, your marriage, and also a love story for your hometown and for the life that God has given you. And I just love that so much. I feel like a lot of times you read memoirs and they're heavy. And that's good too, because you do, I think you learn empathy from reading about other people's stories and all of that. But for yours, it just felt like reading a novel that was a love story, and I love it so much. So, one of the things you talked about with Ben and your relationship, and you mentioned you hit on it a little bit about his faith, and I love that you talk about his faith being so integral into who he is, and we talk about that a lot. It's our faith. And one of the things that there's an author, Alicia Cholet, she writes and she talks about faith is central to who you are. It's not first, because first is something that is in an order or whatever. Yes, but it's central to who you are. And whenever you can kind of understand that, you understand the relationship that faith is meant to be. And I thought about that as you were kind of talking about Ben's faith and how you were drawn to that.
Yes, it's just such an easy part of who he is and has been since he was a little boy. His dad became a minister when Ben was, I think, about 10 years old. So it wasn't his whole life that he was a preacher's kid, but it's like I grew up in a church where our youth minister criticized me because I really loved Jewel, her music.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
And that made me feel like I can't love Jesus and music at the same time. And that was conflicting. And it pushed me away from the church in a way that I don't think I felt like, what kind of God would give the world music and then punish you for loving it?
Yeah.
And that was hard for me. And so then I met him, and faith was something completely different. It was just like the air he breathes.
Yeah.
Right. It wasn't a thing that required a lot of effort or upset. And I wanted to be a part of that. So I loved those 10 years when he was a youth minister. I had such a great time. I kind of just volunteered to be with the girls in the group, that I would do the lessons with them and he would go with the guys and we would do separate retreats. And that was a really special time in our young marriage. When we had just gotten married, that's what we did together. We've been inseparable since we met. But when the years we were engaged and when we were married, that was those kids in our youth group were a big part of our relationship.
Mm-hmm.
It was really special.
Really similar to Willie and I's story. He was a youth minister. I was a children's minister. So we were the same way in those early years of our marriage. It was so sweet to have all these teenagers in our apartment or in our home, and just to get to kind of like grow with them a little bit and learn from them as well. I love that. And I love what you shared about just that, faith being who you are in all aspects. And it's not like exclusionary of like, oh, okay, it's what happens on Sunday morning and then what happens everywhere else is different. It's just integral into your whole part of your life. And I love, thinking about what you guys do in television now. And that was the same for us in Duck Dynasty. We said, we don't, this show is not a show. We're not preaching. We are who we are. And hopefully people will see that there's something in us and it's not us, it's Jesus. And I feel like you guys do that so beautifully on your show. How did that come to be? How did you end up with the show on HGTV?
That is such a crazy story. We didn't mean to be on TV. That was not ever the plan. We renovated this house, and I documented it in an online journal called Make Something Good Today. I wouldn't call it a blog exactly. I didn't have beauty tips or, stories about it. It was just, I wrote about the best thing that happened every day in an effort to focus on counting blessings because I'm an anxious and worried person by nature. And that really, really transformed my life to write every single day about the blessings and only that.
That's so good.
And you find that if you can train yourself to count the blessings and discount the sadnesses or the worries, that it changes who you are. But
that's so good and so important in today's world. I feel like anxiety is such a conversation that's happening with young people and all of us. And we're just bombarded with the bad things. We're just the news, social media, all of that. We're so bombarded with the bad things. And it really does take a focus. I love that scripture about like talking about whatever is good, whatever is true, whatever is holy, think on these things. And I feel like you're talking about that. And so tell us a little bit about, you had a journal called Make Something Good Today.
Called Make Something Good Today. And so sometimes the best things were things we had done in the process of renovating this house. And I owned a wedding stationery company for almost 10 years. That was my first baby. And we were interviewed by a magazine called Southern Weddings, and the article was about Southern newlyweds. And because I was in the wedding industry and we had renovated our own house, they wanted to know about what was that like, working together to renovate your first house together. And an executive at HGTV named Lindsay Widehorn happened to see that article, and she reached out and asked if we had ever thought about doing TV.
Wow.
And the day she emailed was the day Ben had written his resignation letter to the church.
Oh my goodness.
Hey, sisters and friends, y'all, we are so excited for September 8th and 9th to get here, and I know it will be here before we know it. LO Sister Conference is happening again, and y'all, last year was so incredible, but we believe this year is going to be even better. Y'all, we have such incredible worship leaders and speakers joining us, but we want you to be in the room. We can't wait to meet you, to host you, to be in a room together full of worship. So go get your ticket at losisterconference.com. Join us here in Monroe, Louisiana. Sign up for your breakout group today. We cannot wait to see all that God has in store. So don't forget to get your ticket today at losisterconference.com.
It was a check. This was a
big check.
This is the only very, very big check that I can recall in our life. The biggest ever. And it changed everything about what came after. But for, I would say, a year or so before Ben wrote that resignation letter, he had felt like he was being pulled away from it because he did not understand how to connect with young people who were living in another world online, in Snapchat and whatever. I don't even know what there was in 2014, but he had started building furniture and was loving it so much. I needed more help with the administrative side of my business. So he was doing that. And he was like, I think that I feel like I'm walking away from God by finishing this chapter of my life in ministry, because my parents are both ministers and because this is what I've always done.
Mm-hmm.
And it scared him. He was afraid he was making the wrong choice. But he also felt like, I'm not supposed to be doing this anymore. It just feels wrong now. His brother also had just graduated from high school that year. And Jesse was always his tether to people 10 years younger than him. Mm-hmm. He felt like as long as he had Jesse and he knew Jesse would tell him the truth of the heart of what young people were dealing with and what they were facing, then he knew how to minister to those people. And once Jesse was not a teenager anymore, he was like unmoored. He didn't know. He didn't know anymore.
Yeah.
And it was a really hard time for Ben. Like that year was so hard, him making that decision. And he finally wrote the letter and he called our preacher and said, can we get coffee in the morning? And our preacher said, oh no. And when he hung up, the email came an hour later.
Oh my
from
goodness.
Lindsay Widehorn.
Wow.
And it felt not like, well, we're going to make a TV show now.
Yeah.
It felt like an affirmation that we can have an impact and make a difference in other ways.
Yes.
This is not the end of that.
Yes.
It's just a new thing. And maybe we should open our eyes to other opportunities that happen. And
That's so good.
It felt like a little encouragement
Mm-hmm.
that we got that email, but we were like, how cool, this will be a fun thing we have to film something called a sizzle, which is like a preview for a TV show that doesn't exist. And, if nothing else, it'll be this fun, silly thing we had. And we'll go on about our life with our stationery business, and you'll build furniture, and we'll volunteer at our church for whatever they need. And that'll be our life. And then that's just not what happened.
Wow. That's so crazy. I love all of that. There's a few things that you said that resonated with me. Well, one, I remember that kind of moment in our life. Willie was youth minister. He was working at our summer camp, Camp Chioka, that we still are a big part of. And he decided to quit that and go back to work for his family business. And it was a tough year because it was like, what am I supposed to do? Where am I? Where do I fit in all this? He didn't quite know. And I just remember that feeling, walking through that time with him. And I can feel that you walking through that time with Ben of like, okay, what's next? And yesterday, a couple of days ago, I was actually interviewed on another podcast, and she asked me, do you feel like y'all are in ministry? And I never really been asked that question before, but I was like, yeah. I think we all are, whatever we're doing, we are in ministry. We're called to go into all the world and preach the gospel. So it's what we do wherever we are and whatever we are. And we're not the kind of, I don't know, sometimes I can get nervous when people like send me a business email and it's like super spiritual. I'm like, okay, it's not that. It's just more of like, it is who we are. It's what we do. And so whatever we do, we are in ministry. So I love that. That was kind of that nod to you guys to say like, oh, you're not done just being a light and helping people and pointing people to Jesus. It's going to look different. It's going to be in a different way, but you're not done with that.
Mm-hmm. But we couldn't tell that at the time,
Yeah.
We were going out with a lot of faith that we will always make ends meet, and He will take care of us. He will provide. It won't be from TV, but this will be a fun thing that we can do together. And
yeah.
Oh, man.
Well, and that step into television too, it's so weird. I remember the first year that we did it, telling Willie, it was like, should we like gear up? Because like, we're going to have a TV show. What happens if it hits? And, we're a small family business. Like there's, everyone who works for us is family. That's it. And I mean, we had been successful in that, we had products in Walmart and Bass Pro. We were doing some of that, but still we were operating as very much as a family business. And what happens, and I remember him going like, TV shows come and go all the time. Like we might make 3 episodes and we're done. You just don't know. You really don't know. And then as we started doing it, we were like, well, we think it's kind of funny, but we don't know if other people will. It's kind of like that. How was it? How were those early days of whenever you did decide, you did get picked up, you were like, okay, we are going to make a TV show. What did that feel like?
I just want to hit pause for 1 second.
Yeah, go ahead.
While we were in youth ministry, they had trunk or treat.
Uh-huh. Oh my goodness. That is awesome.
This is my husband as your husband.
He looks great.
This is very meta, isn't it?
He might would have won one of those Duck Dynasty contests. That is too good.
It was honestly a cop-out because everywhere he went, people were like, you look like that guy from Duck Dynasty.
Did they really? That is awesome.
Anyway.
I love it. I love it so much. That was a weird time. It was so funny whenever
it's weird if you're as a human being, you've become a costume.
Yeah, you've become a costume. Yeah. But that
had to be weird for you.
Fun. It was weird, but it was fun. It was just like, and we always say, we feel like God just kind of lifted us up and carried us through that crazy time. And he does, he prepares you for things that you have no idea he's preparing you for.
Yeah. It's, it felt like, we were doing a very small thing, making a documentary basically about our friends and our life at home, and that probably no one would see it. When you're making it, it doesn't feel, I don't know how it was for making your show, but making a home renovation show, it feels like you're installing a window. Mm-hmm. Today at work, I installed a window. Mm-hmm. I made a basket, and then I tiled a fireplace, and then I went home and I cooked supper, and that's what it felt like, what it feels like to make Hometown. Yeah. And then you see it's in its finished iteration on TV, and it's a story.
Yeah.
And it has an impact. It means something to people that you would never imagine are seeing it or having connections to it. But I think God has somehow put some sort of, I think of us like we're covered in some sort of bubble where I don't feel that. Yeah. I don't feel like we're making a TV show I still don't. We've been on the cover of People magazine 5 times. It must be the same as being in your local newspaper because I'm not a big deal. This can't be a big deal.
Yeah.
Everything has become, I don't have the big head, as they say, because I don't feel any different, and I don't feel like the work I'm doing is any different. God has done something there. Yeah. It's very strange. You know how after you have a surgery and they give you a medicine, and you know that, like Ben just had massive shoulder surgery, and they gave him medicine afterward. And he's like, nothing hurts, but you know it really should.
Yeah. Yes.
It's like that. It feels that way. Like God has put some sort of hedge of protection around our brains and our hearts that we don't feel any different.
I know exactly what you're saying. I say that all the time. I have kind of that feeling of God lifting us and kind of carrying us through, because it did not feel that weird. It felt very normal. And I know a lot of it was very weird and strange, but it kind of just felt like our life. And we have a video of that Willie actually filmed, and he said he remembers thinking, I'm going to film this because later this is going to seem weird, but just walking out of our Duck Commander warehouse, and we still have a lot of fans that come, which we love and we're so grateful for. But during that time period, there would be, hundreds and hundreds of people outside as soon as we'd walk out every day. And it was just, we had to kind of like buy up all the property around for parking. And it was just kind of this like, people just came and came and came. And it was, now looking back, I'm like, that was weird, because you would walk out of work and there would be these cheering crowds, And
I think in the moment you like have some sort of self-protection thing where your brain goes, they're not here for me.
No, in the moment, it didn't feel that
they're here
strange.
For something else.
Yeah, you just walked to your car and went home, just like you normally do, and we'd be at the grocery store, and people would say, like, why are you at the grocery store? You're like, because we need to buy food like everybody else. Like,
eggs.
Exactly. And I think that y'all had the privilege that we had of doing it in your hometown. And I love that so much, because it is all the things that are really important stay the same. Your friendships and relationships, and we
go to my mama's house 3 nights a week, and we eat dinner there, and the girls jump on the trampoline,
and all those things get to the things that are actually really important that will still be there whenever whatever this fame goes or comes and goes, or or what remains. And I think that you have the privilege of that, and we do too. And I want to talk a little bit about that, about like coming back to your small town, because I do feel like that is another thing that young people, they're like, oh, I can't go back to my small town because, I'm not going to find anybody to marry there. Or I'm not going to, or like, I need something bigger or whatever. And there is a beauty in that, just going back to your roots and going back to where people know you and have known you your whole life, and where your family is. And we're such big family people. And I know not everyone has the blessing of having that. And so just talk about that, like going back to your small town and family and creating family wherever you are.
Yeah, so we went to Ole Miss after the community college where we met, 15 minutes from my parents' house.
Mm-hmm.
But I still lived in the dorm because it was college. And then we went to Ole Miss, and at Ole Miss, he was roommates with a guy I was friends with in high school that I'd known my whole life. And then I met Mallory, my best friend. We were roommates. I introduced her to my cousin Jim. They got married. Josh married a girl that he met after college, but then she moved to Laurel. So we had this family that began in college, and we just brought it with us to Laurel. Ben had moved around. He's a Methodist preacher's kid. So every 5-ish years, they moved to a new church. So he was used to moving his whole life. He never had roots anywhere. And this was big for him to, I've had roots here that go back, 3 generations. So this is home. And he was happy to have a place to put down roots. And my mom and dad now live, 5 minutes away, and my brother's 10 or 15 minutes away. And Ben's little brother, who was the high schooler when he was in youth ministry, he and his wife have 2 babies, and they live a block from us. It feels really good I know that it's a thing that people do. They move far away from their parents and their siblings, but I haven't ever experienced that. I went to Ole Miss for 2 years, and then I came back home. And I thought that I had what it took to get out there and leave and see the world. But the truth is, none of that is as good or important or as special for me as being with my family, who were there for me my whole life.
Yeah.
And there's just so much comfort. And I call my mom 2 times a day probably, and she'll just drop in at our house, or we just drop in at their house. Every day I see my parents, and I'm excited that one day when I don't have them anymore, I won't have regrets.
Mm-hmm.
And I won't have regrets that my children didn't know them.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's worth more than any experience or being able to eat at fancy restaurants in a bigger city.
Yeah.
It's worth so much more.
Absolutely. I love that so much.
That's not a priority for everybody, and not everybody has that relationship with their parents or their siblings. And I can understand where it might feel like the right thing to do to leave. Mm-hmm. But for me, I just love being able to see my mom and dad, go watch a John Wayne movie, go have a hamburger at their house. It's just so nice. Yeah.
We feel the same way. All of our kids have moved away for college or for a few years, and then kind of made their way back. And we're so grateful and love it. And we're right there. My parents are right next door. Willie's brothers are in our neighborhood. My grandmother, who's now a great grandmother, is right there. And we just think, just the value of having those different generations living in community together. But also I think, just the value of community, and it doesn't have to be your blood family, but just finding those people. I love your saying your family, like friends and family mixed together. And I just love that, because I think that is what's so important. And I remember whenever Sadie moved back here, she had been away for several years through her kind of like college years. She'd gone to Nashville and came back, and her having to really work to reestablish those friendships and that community. And it doesn't just come easy. You do have to set down those roots and work at it. And I read about that you guys would hold like potlucks on the lawn and things like that. Talk about that a little bit, because I think that is so important for people to understand. It's not just, doesn't just all come. And even with family, like we all live beside each other and we are close and we love one another, but it's not perfect. Like you have to make a point. You have to make an effort. You have to, make sure you walk outside of your door and go next door and go have coffee with your grandmother if you want to keep a relationship. You have to do those things. And also you have to, look past things, give grace to one another whenever you disagree, and you don't to live in community like that.
Isn't there a huge deficit there where people are showing less and less grace towards each other if they have a disagreement over one thing?
Yes.
If I believe in this and you believe in that,
Yes.
and we disagree on that one thing, but in everything else, we have this very happy and good friendship, we're going to throw it away over the one thing? And
I always talk about how I think that a big family actually helps you the most in that, because we disagree, like, as a family. Like, I don't agree with everything everyone in our family thinks, or everybody's opinions on any politics or anything, but we love each other and we come back together. And I do think there's some disassociation with that, and people moving away and not being forced to say, like, oh, even though I disagree with you, I still love you because, you're my people. That has become so prevalent in our world today, that just writing people off that disagree.
Yeah. We are, I feel like if there is a ministry in hometown, people do love to see that no matter how bad something is, it can be brought back. That applies to people. And I think the other thing is they see us welcome in people who stereotypically they think we would not be welcoming to.
Yeah.
And I think that that's a big opportunity to show people Jesus, in that I don't have to agree with every homeowner I have on my show. I just have to show them love. And that is something anybody can do. And we're doing it less and less. We're letting the things that we don't agree on be the thing that keep us from creating community.
Yes.
Communities fail when people don't look for the things that they do appreciate about each other. I think there's probably some people in pop culture who aren't believers, but they do a lot of good in the world.
Yeah.
We shouldn't discount the good that they do.
Yeah.
Just because, and maybe, God is going to find a way to turn their story around and they become believers someday. Who knows? But we shouldn't discount the good that people are putting into the world, even if we disagree on some things. And I think that's another reason I'm so I have some really strong feelings about social media and our kids, our teenagers. I don't think that young people, 8th graders, 9th graders, 10th graders, certainly not 5th graders, are in a position emotionally and maturity-wise where they can see something online, recognize that that's different from what I believe. And that's okay. I don't have to be that way. I don't have to follow. I don't have to follow what social media tells me to do. And I don't have to feel pressured or judged for being the way I am because of social media. It's hard enough to be 14.
Yeah. Without all the pressure and all the voices, the thousands and thousands of voices that can come into your life and social media. I wanted to talk to you about that a little bit, because I saw your post about that you're starting something, and you gave us just a little tease, so you didn't tell the whole thing. So I don't know if you're ready to tell the whole thing yet, but I am cheering you on 100%. You mentioned that earlier about Ben working in youth ministry when kind of that whole thing was coming up, and that's our kids' teenage years, when Snapchat and Instagram was all kind of becoming this thing. And, it was a scary world out there, because you're like, all of a sudden your kids can be opened up to the whole entire world and who might come into them and speak into their life, and is very disarming. And, we didn't do it all perfectly. I always tell our kids, I'm like, I think you'll do it better because you know more. Right.
When you know more, do more.
Yes.
But
exactly.
When you know better, do better. But you seriously, parents who have kids your kids' age are feeling a lot of guilt about, I let them have social media. I didn't know, but you didn't know.
Yeah.
And
I just remember all of a sudden the internet is in everything. All of a sudden, when our kids were teenagers, you could control it by like your computer that's in the main part of your house. There was that. Then all of a sudden it's like, oh, you can get on the internet on your Kindle. You can get on the internet on your Mario, whatever. It's all these things and like all this access to our children. And like they're kids. Their brains aren't fully developed. They're not ready for all that access. So I love that you're talking about it more and speaking out about it.
And God didn't design us to know the opinion, what 1,000 people think about us.
Right. Mm-hmm.
We were never designed to know what 1,000 people think of us.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where social media is dangerous. An adult, I think, can take that information. You can hear what someone's opinions are of you, and it still stings.
Yeah, right.
But it also does, I know that it's not, they don't know me.
Mm-hmm.
They know an it's a picture of me that looks a lot like me, that sounds a lot like me, but it's not who I am.
Right.
And I understand that separation where 16-year-old me would not have. It would have crushed me. Mm-hmm. It would have absolutely crushed me if I had had access to what I know that teenage kids have access to now. I'm so passionate about this one thing because it feels like social media access for our kids. I feel like when you're 16, you can drive a car, right? When you're 21, you can have a glass of wine. When you're of a certain age where you can handle the repercussions, or you can manage what you have to do, then it's okay.
Yeah.
And I just don't, I'm not going to let my 12-year-old daughters drive a car.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm in the same way, I'm not going to let my 16-year-old daughters have access to something that could crush them.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And one day it'll be their decision and they can, and they'll, I hope by then, see it for what it is.
Mm-hmm.
For me, an amazing tool.
Right.
Social media is one of the greatest tools in the world for connecting with people who have similar like interest in design inspiration and communicating with people who love hometown.
Yes.
It's a great tool.
Right.
But it's not a tool that my kids need yet.
Right. I love it.
And so I found that I don't have a single friend who believes their kids should have access to it.
Yeah.
It's not, we all have had this conversation like, so-and-so got a phone in Lucy's class. So they're 9 years old and they have a phone now. And I was thinking like, that means they have access to a lot of really scary things, you know? And none of our friends want that. So we said, our family, the Nowells, Raspberries, and then other neighbors and friends, the Trusts, we all said, let's just not let our kids have access to that. Because then they can't say, everybody's got it. None of your friends do.
Yeah.
Your friends and your cousins don't.
Mm-hmm.
So what happens if we can change the conversation to more like, one day I'll have social media. Right now I don't need it, and no one I know uses it.
Right.
None of my friends are using it.
Yes.
None of my friends have it. If you can change it so also there are children who cannot afford to have a phone. They get left out and ostracized just the same as the kids whose parents say, we're not going to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And they all have this thing in common. What if you could form groups within schools, within communities where these families find each other and they lock arms and they say, we're going to do this together. Mm-hmm. We're going to support each other together. Our kids are not going to be the ones left out.
Yes. I could not love that more. I'm cheering you on from afar. If there's anything I can do to help you in that mission,
I'm going to reach out.
Tag me. Yes. Because I like tap me in because I'm so in on that. I just really, I love what you're doing in that, and I think that it is huge and transformative. And the statistics, I mean, what we see that has happened since the invention of social media till now in our kids and depression and anxiety and all that. I mean, it just cannot be dismissed.
Terrifying.
It is terrifying. It cannot be dismissed. And I think that as parents, we have to lock arms and do something about it. Not just complain about it and say, oh, this crazy world we're in. Like we can actually do something about it. We actually can. Yeah, it's our choice.
Yeah, form a community that's not online.
Yeah.
is the real goal. And it's not so much anti-social media as I believe that kids who have a chance to grow up without it have a chance to be more engaged with the people and the interests and the activities that they love. They become the best version of themselves, and then they'll be ready.
Yeah. And then
Deal
they
with what
can,
social media can give them.
that's good. And then they have access to this online community that can open up things rather than make you more insular and the things that we all see social media has done. Yeah.
Yes. And there will be a lot more information about that. We're going to have a really big event happening at the end of the summer to launch the new school year that I'm excited about.
Great.
And I'll have more information about it then.
That's so great.
But we've got so much interest.
I love it.
I
So
made
for
that
now,
video.
what can they do? For now, what can we do to kind of like say we want to get involved? Is there any more way to get more information about this?
Yes, there's a link on my Instagram page for
Okay.
you adults who are using social media. You can tap that, and it's where you can join a mailing list. So far, 20,000 people signed up on the first day.
Amazing.
Parents who want to raise engaged youth is what we're saying. There are a few kids that I know who are in Helen's ballet school or who went to our church who didn't have access to social media, and those kids are just excelling in so many ways. They know who they are. They are self-assured, and they know what they want to be. They know what they want to do. And now that they have the option to have social media, they're like, no thanks.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not a thing where we want to I want my kids to see how awesome their life can be without it. Mm-hmm. It's not about how awful social media is. And anyway, I'm very excited that we have 20,000 people so far, parents who want to know more about it. And if any of you want to know more about it, please do go to erinben.co/pages/Osprey. I need to make a better URL for it, but it was just like a soft launch for now. So.
It's so great. I love it. Well, thanks so much. This has really been a joy to get to talk to you today. I love what you're doing. We are, like I said, cheering you on from afar. Neighbor states, and hopefully we'll get to see each other in person someday.
Thank you for the example that you are. As a mama to my generation of mamas with little ones, we're watching moms like you, and we're learning really good lessons. I really appreciate you, Korie. And I appreciate the kids that you've raised. Sadie is making a whole world of difference. And especially we have an assistant, her name is Shay, and I've told you about her before, but she just admires everything Sadie does so much. You've raised good kids. Way to go.
Good job, Mama. Aw, thank you so much. Good job, Mama, to you too.